Hi everybody. I'm just waiting. We're going to do a live Instagram over the next 40 minutes or so, and just waiting on great cause to join me. So, what's going to be the topic of conversation? We don't know. We're going to see where it goes, and feel free to join us. Any questions that you have, just to join us a question into chat. So, in terms of the breath itself, I suppose some of the conversation is going to be centered around the application of breathing, because this has been an area that's been overlooked in many instances for many years, and now people are starting to realize that the breath has got significance. So we're seeing people from different walks of life, etc., in terms of their occupation and why would they do so, etc. So I'm waiting on Gray to join us. Gray is based in London, and he's a master instructor with the Oxygen Advantage. He's been teaching breathing for quite a number of years now, and so he should be with us fairly shortly. Gray,
Patrick,
good afternoon.
good
How are you?
afternoon, sir. I'm good, and
Nice.
yourself?
Plenty of greenery in London. Is
Yeah,
that is that a real
that's the
plant or is
real
that a
background. That's
real
the real
plant? Wow,
background.
that looks good.
Positive.
Oh, it's lovely.
There you
Well
go.
done. That's nice. Cool. So welcome. So yeah, so we just said we'd have a conversation about all things breathing and see where it goes,
Yeah, I love
Just
it.
one of those things. And what drew, can you just give us a little bit of background about yourself, where you're based, what drew you to the bread, and part of why as well, you've got an instructor training coming up as well in London very shortly.
Yes, yeah. Um, I first got involved with breathwork in inverted commas back in 2008, actually, and I was lucky enough to work with a running coach. He was my running coach, an England athletics coach called Robbie McNellis, and he, as luck would have it, was also a physiotherapist. So he's working in healthcare and was working in rehab after people had had maybe heart and lung operations or any illness. So he was doing all of their physiotherapy from a breath point of view. And I remember the first session that we had, he had me lying down watching how many breaths I took per minute. And I was like, well, this is weird. I've never thought of this in terms of exercise and running. And he was the first person to introduce me to nasal breathing when running. So I was quite
Well,
attuned to that. And then from my love of running and from working with Robin and then wanting to take it a step further, I got into Qi running and worked with Danny Dreyer, who is American Qi running coach, ultra runner. And that's how I met you. As you know, you and Danny were doing a lot of communication in terms of the oxygen advantage, working together, chatting about that because you'd seen, I think, the Qi running element and how we were focusing in Qi running on nasal breathing. So that's how obviously I came to be introduced to yourself, thankfully. And then really what was great about meeting yourself, doing that first ever masterclass in London, and then doing the first ever instructor training back in 2016 is really from your knowledge from Buteyko and all of the stuff that you were bringing into the breathwork from the science point of view. It's like, wow, this is just a really big eye opener. I've understood and I've felt the benefits of easy, light nasal breathing in exercise. Now I'm understanding more of the science behind it and the real application of it. So just is fascinating how all of these things just came together for me, luckily. So I was just in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people at the right time. So that's how I got involved with yourself and with the Oxygen Advantage.
the
And
science, sorry, Gray, the
that's how,
science is pretty important, because I just feel as well, if we don't show that there's a really good depth in terms of the breath and the application of it, if it's too woo-woo, it's not going to reach out to the people who need it the most.
yeah,
And we don't need to have it so science heavy, but when it comes to running with the mouth closed, the most simplest thing in the world that you could do, but yet very few people are talking about it. And yet when it comes to breathing through the mouth while running,
Why would we breathe through an open mouth while running? It just doesn't make sense. Everybody is breathing through an open mouth while running.
Mm.
And I think it's just because it's easy. But, you know, we've often spoke about what does the mouth do in terms of the breath. It does absolutely zero, nothing. Zilch. Simply a hole. Like all you have to do is go into your bathroom, open your mouth, and look into your mouth and just ask, what does your mouth do in terms of the breath? Nothing. But in terms of running, what did you see when you started applying it? So you started doing it to yourself first, and then you started teaching your students.
Yeah, so when I first started working with Robin, as I said, it must be about 2000, 2007, 2008. He got me nasal breathing. We were doing 400-meter track repeats, nasal breathing, going up to what I then now understand was going up to threshold, nasal breathing, just breathing in and out through the nose and just noticing the benefits from that. And he was telling me a little bit of the science. But I think, like you say, is the mouth. I often get people saying, oh, well, I need to sometimes breathe out through the mouth. And I actually think when you get to that point of where you are going to threshold and you're going beyond threshold, so if you're doing sort of like interval repeats, then you can use the mouth as a breath out to almost like release any tightness or tension or energy. But there's what I will always say to the clients, there's a big difference between that type of mouth breathing and gasping, airing, and almost looking deflated and injured and struggling and being really challenging yourself. Challenging is most probably the wrong word to use there, but struggling and being out of control of the breath. Whereas you can be powerful and strong in and out through the nose when you are running it. So if you're going into that gear one, which is like, you don't even have to think about the breath. You can go from walk to run really easily. Breath is just literally naturally going in and out of the body. Because I think one of the things I found with people when they focus on nasal breathing to start with is they think they have to be doing something. So they'll go, and actually they're pulling breath in and pushing breath out through the nose, which is not necessarily good if you're starting off nice and light. So you can actually be doing inefficient nasal breathing and efficient mouth breathing. But as you say, if there's that mouth wide open, it's almost like letting the energy out. It's almost like just deflating the body. And if you're landing with a mouth wide open and you're deflated and heavy, it looks sluggish and heavy and no energy and no power. Whereas if you're just keeping the mouth closed, you've almost like, it's like bouncing a ball. It's like you've got that energy in the body. You've got that springiness in the body because you're keeping the mouth closed. The tongue position I find is really important as well when you're running, is that the tongue is resting gently on the roof of the mouth, because the tongue is sort of like the top end of the core. I sort of visualize that. So it's like having that little stopper in the top of a beach ball or top of a bouncing ball. And again, from a moisture point of view, if you're constantly breathing out through the mouth, you're just losing moisture. So you're just having to drink and you're having to drink and you're having to drink. Whereas if you keep the mouth closed, you're maintaining that moisture within the body as well. A lot of it, I think, is just awareness. And again, this is the great thing about the stuff that you're doing, that all of the Oxygen Advantage instructors are putting out there, is it is so simple that often people don't think of it. It's like, well, of course I can breathe through the nose. But then you watch people and go, actually, can you? Or they start to try.
Or do they?
Breathe through the nose.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's just at the start it's a bit tougher. And normally when you switch from mouth to nose breathing, you're not going to achieve 100% of your work rate intensity.
No.
It's going to be about 85 to 90%. But I suppose people realize that if you want to strengthen something, you add an extra load onto it. And when you breathe through your nose during physical exercise, you are adding an extra load onto your exercise. And the air hunger that people experience is due to an elevation of carbon dioxide in the blood. And I think we need to get away from that myth that get in as much oxygen as you can and get rid of as much carbon dioxide. So when you go for a run with your mouth closed, because of the elevated carbon dioxide, you've got more oxygen getting to the working muscles. Have you seen many people say to you, that when they come back from a run with their mouth closed, their recovery is better, they just feel much better as a result of it?
Definitely. going back to the point you made at the very beginning there, it's about what is your intention of that run. So if you go out on a run and you've constantly had your mouth open because you're going at high intensity, because you think running should be cardiovascular and you should be really pushing it, then if you switch straight away, closing your mouth and try and breathe through the nose, then you are going to go, it's going to be too much, and you're just going to go, no, I can't do it. So if you start off really gradually and just that intention of just doing a really easy walk run, which a lot of runners hate, oh no, I don't want to do that, I don't want to slow down. But
Can you describe that? Walk run.
Walk run. The classic of this is if you think about the Couch to 5K program. Couch to 5K program is brilliant. Loads of people use it. Loads of people get benefit from that. But the big thing that I always say to my clients, if you're doing a Couch to 5K, is don't focus on the time. So the Couch to 5K will say, right, start off walking for a minute, running for 30 seconds, walking for a minute, running for 30 seconds, and then run for a minute, walk for 30 seconds. So they'll do it in time, which is great. But the big point that people miss there is go with the breath. So what I say is forget about time. Go run where you can breathe easily through the nose. The minute the breath rate starts to change, the minute the breath rate starts to increase or the volume starts to increase, go back into a walk.
So when it gets too tough. So you're saying use your nose as a barometer of
nose, not the time. And it works every time with people. It's like, never even thought of that. Because the other thing, again, with any physical exercise, not just with running, is that if you're working on a time or a pace, you're always going to be, that's always going to be the marker of what you're wanting to achieve, rather than following the breath and listening to the body.
Quality.
So if you're saying, right, now in the walk to run, I've got to run for 3 minutes, but actually that 3 minutes, by the time you get to 2 minutes 30, you're out of breath, you lose control of the breath is going, but you've still got that 30 seconds to go. That's the bit where you can actually be damaging the body, damaging the breath, so you're not getting any benefit from that. So you're much better off running to the point where, right, I can feel now my breath is changing, now I slow down. And then you can mix that up. So that's like gear one. And then what you can say is, right, now, continue nasal breathing, but this is going to be a little bit more challenging. Like you say there, you're going to feel a little bit of air hunger. So you're really finding that fine line of how much foot can I put on the accelerator, but still keeping control of my breath. If you lose control of the breath, then you're going to lose control of the movement. So the breath is always guiding you. And again, that sounds really woo-woo. The breath is guiding you, but in zones, your aerobic training zones, your anaerobic training zones, all of those different training zones, you follow the breath. You cannot go into that anaerobic training zone, or you can't go too high into that anaerobic training zone if you're nasal breathing, because your nasal breathing is making sure that you're balancing oxygen and CO2. So it's a very, very simple way of monitoring your effort level and your training zones. But it's understanding that.
So what you're saying is that you're not going to go anaerobic as quick because you've got more oxygen delivery to the working muscles by virtue of nasal breathing. And then when people continue nasal breathing, of course, the body adapts to it. And this is really about breathing efficiency, that if you go for a run, you don't need as much air to achieve that intensity of movement.
Yeah. So the more you've done the more you've done the oxygen advantage breath work, the more you've done your breathe light when you're not running, the more you've done your breath holds, you're creating a foundation for that efficiency that when you go running or any exercise, is you don't have to think about it. I don't want clients to be thinking about how should I be breathing when I'm running. I want you to be out there enjoying it or aiming for whatever challenge that run is all about. It's all about the foundation work that you've done with the other breath work practice that you're doing. But then you can bring, maybe one of the training sessions is, let's just focus on some particular breathing patterns. And these are things that I would only explore with clients when they've really understood the biochemistry, the biomechanics. Because if you're just going to breathe in this particular way, oh, I breathe in for 3, breathe out for 4, and all of this, then you just start doing the big full breaths and everything. So that's what's great about understanding the foundation of breath. The biochemistry, first thing that I didn't realize is like biochemistry is first, is understanding that oxygen CO2 thing, and then everything else builds on top of that.
I just see Keaton Track has put a post there. It doesn't work for everybody because he's seen a heart rate of 160 to 180 when nasal breathing. I think that's because of the points that you made, that when you first switch from mouth to nose breathing, it's not about doing a run by breathing in and out through your nose with excruciating air hunger, because then you've put the body into that stress response. So what we're saying is to make sure that you've got control over your breathing during the run, and go at a pace whereby you have all of that control. And if it's too excruciating, the air hunger, then you're saying is to breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth to get rid of carbon dioxide, to get rid of air hunger. And then if you go to another level, you go mouth to mouth.
You see,
Yeah,
I was just going to say, the point you make there is coming back a step as well. So this is what a lot of runners and exercisers miss. You've got to think, why is your heart rate going up to 160 if you start off running and with the nasal breathing as well? So the first thing is efficiency. So again, it's how efficient are you in terms of your movement? Because it's not just about, oh, just switch to nasal breathing. Because if you're running inefficiently, so if you're really overstriding and using too much muscle power to run, then that will bring the heart rate up. And it will then be a big difference if you go from mouth breathing to nasal breathing. So it's not just, well, as we know, breath won't fix everything. You've got to bring everything else into the balance. The temperature here in London has been like 30 degrees the past few days. Some heart rate when you go out is going to be...
Send some of that over to the west coast of Ireland.
Oh, brilliant. I'm glad you're getting it over there. But again, heart rate with the temperature is going to increase. So just the temperature going up. How hydrated you are is going to affect your heart rate. What you've eaten, how you've slept. So all of those other things are going to kick in. So it's not just think about nasal breathing and running. But the first thing I would say is you can go from what's your heart rate when you're walking? How do you walk? How do you move? How is your movement? That will have a big effect on your heart rate.
That's
and
interesting.
I personally wouldn't go to the point, I mean, this is just my personal opinion, an opinion with my clients. I would not go to the point where you are actually having to breathe in through the mouth, because that is really, if there was a tiger chasing me and I had to literally escape, then do whatever. But I wouldn't take anybody to that level in training, because are they structurally efficient and structurally able to take that load on the body? Because again, a lot of people have maybe improved their cardiovascular system. So from a fitness point of view, they're in a good place. But structurally, are they in a good place? So if you sprint and your knees out of alignment, or your back's out of alignment, or your center of gravity is in the wrong place, then that's going to put a pressure on the structure of your body. So you don't want to overload your physical structure just for the sake of overloading your cardiovascular structure, if you like. So I personally would get to the point where you can breathe in through, always breathe in through the nose. Say if you're doing a little interval sprint because you're structurally, your body is able to take that, then out through the mouth, like we've done. You could do the challenge where you're really breathing in through the nose to the top end, stop, full breath in, a couple of exhales, get rid of that excess CO2, back into your nasal breathing, and that really brings the heart rate down. So a couple of points again with the recovery. What I've found is that if you hold the breath on the top of an inhale, that really brings the heart rate down. So that's a good way of doing recovery. One of our coaches, Kevin McQuaid, actually, who is an excellent runner. I think he's like a sub 3 hour marathon runner. And he actually does interval sprints and then does a breath hold, and then so he does a breath hold at the end of the out breath and then does nasal breathing, which is really challenging. So all of these things you can explore.
Can you describe what he does just in a little bit more detail? So
I hope I'm getting this right. He might tell me I'm getting this wrong, but he will do an interval sprint, or he'll do a sprint for a certain amount of time, whatever he's training for. And then at the end of that, he will do inhale, exhale through the mouth, inhale, exhale, exhale through the mouth, breath hold. So
on the next
blow off CO2, hold the breath at the bottom of the breath. I'm doing that to hold my breath. Hold the breath at the bottom of the breath, so then you get in the carbon dioxide building back up, and then straight into nasal breathing. So then just arming the breath with nasal breathing. That I find really challenging. What I will tend to do, what I can do is breath in, breath out, breath in, breath out, breath in and hold at the top of the breath. So at least you've got some space to let the CO2 build up and the oxygen build up. And that actually, you can feel the heart rate coming down when you do that breath hold at the top. It's more challenging with a breath hold at the bottom.
I suppose the interesting thing about the heart rate, and this was discovered back in 1913, stimulating the vagus nerve by having that slow and prolonged exhalation. I know it can be difficult enough when people are gassed out, but if they had it in mind, any degree of slowness that you can put on the exhalation, you can help to stimulate the vagus nerve. And it secretes the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, which will naturally cause the heart rate to slow down. So post-physical exercise, we typically have people put their hands either side of their lower ribs, and we have them breathing in with a really slow and relaxed exhalation in order to bring down the heart rate as quick as possible, in and out through the nose. So it's always nose, slow and low, as opposed to a lot of people recovering from physical exercise, they're bent over, their mouth is open, their upper chest breathing, there's a poor gas exchange, you know, all of those things. So a lot of people are doing things. If we as human beings, if we feel suffocated, we naturally revert to fast upper chest breathing, which is entirely the wrong way to do it, because all it does is feed into the suffocation. I suppose the mantra then that you'll be bringing in is the nose, slow and low.
Yeah, definitely. Just slowing the breath, I think, makes a big difference in recovery. And as you say, the slow breath out or the breath hold, because of the dive response, the breath hold will bring the heart rate down. I've been using, I know you've Andrew Huberman's physiological sigh. I think that is a really good way of bringing the heart rate down as well. So you can do the in and then a sip in again, and then a long exhale out. And that is really nice to give yourself that recovery at the end of, doesn't have to be a hard session. It can be when you've gone to a certain level where it's not, where you need that little bit of release, if you like, at the end of a session. It's a good way to.
So takes a sip of air, holds the breath. How long does he hold it for? 5 seconds?
It's not necessarily a hold at the top. It's a longer breath in, and then a little sip. So you sip in again, and then you just breathe out. Now he will breathe out, which is fine. I use that a lot in the Qi Gong, in that release breath. But you can do, and you can do it out through the nose as well. There is something about, and this is what I'm discovering for myself personally, because of my Qi Gong practice and my teacher training in Qi Gong. There is something about a release of an exhale through the mouth, which is very different to mouth breathing. So it is very cleansing and clearing. And also when we think of sound, and I know we've talked about humming before, where the humming, you're creating nasal nitric oxide. So we know you're getting more oxygen uptake, you're opening up the airways with that nasal nitric oxide. And there's something about a sound that actually helps sometimes with that longer exhale. So in Qi Gong, there are things called healing sounds, again, which sounds a bit woo-woo, but at the same time, creating a sound creates vibration in the nasal cavities. So whether it's a hum, whether it's a shh, and things like that, I'm playing around with stuff like that in my own personal practice to help with recovery. And also when you're running, if you're feeling a little bit tired on the run, just hum out, and you're running past people and they're all going, what's this guy doing? But actually, if you just have a hum on that out breath, you're still breathing in and out through the nose, but it helps to control the exhale. And you just think, I'm just getting more oxygen. Did we freeze there?
We froze.
I couldn't even see any questions. I was trying to see some questions, but I couldn't even see any questions. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Good old internet.
That's it, and it's probably mine. I doubt it's the internet in London. I'd say it's more the internet here in Galway that's the problem. So, just we wanted to talk as well about people who are applying breathing exercise. Some interesting people over the years and where it's going. And I suppose I'd never imagined that we'd be seeing the people now, the caliber of people who are putting it in. For example, we have military, some of our instructors are special weapons and tactics. We're working with elite police. I'm working with an Air Force, with pilots, and you've got some interesting people that you're working with as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the best job in the world, because actually, particularly when you're working with doing like the instructor training, I'm learning more from them than they are from me. I shouldn't say that really. But I mean, I learn so much from the clients that we are working with. And I think a lot of that is attributed to yourself and the way you deliver the oxygen advantage and the way you actually open it up to so many people, because it can be so, what I found with a lot of techniques is it can be very dogmatic and you have to teach it like this. And this is how we teach it. But yeah, what I love about the way you deliver the stuff and you teach the stuff and your writings and everything is like, you will say, yeah, bring this in, bring that in, as long as it all works. Because for me, what that shows is the oxygen advantage and that the foundation of the oxygen advantage. If it works in all of these other different practices and other ways of people working with it, that is fantastic. And what I think, again, it's sort of like grown organically in terms of the instructor training because of lockdown. So like, who knew we'd be doing Zoom instructor trainings? But that, I think, has given us a massive opportunity, because what we're getting now is that if you're doing the online stuff and you're doing the 7 classes, you could do all the science, Patrick. So if people are doing your 7 classes, you're getting all of the science, you're getting all of the understanding, you're getting all of the background. So now what I see as my job as a coach coaching instructors is, yes, obviously go through any of that science that we need to go through in the online training and stuff. But then I see my job is to work with that client and say, how can you, as a nutritionalist, as a strength and conditioning coach, as a yoga teacher, as a voice coach, as an Olympic athlete, all of these different people that have come through our training now, I see that sort of like my job is to help them incorporate it into their training. So it might be we will get people who have got no real background in fitness, but maybe nutrition. So we had Maria, who was training with us. She's a nutritionalist. She runs forest schools. So she has a really different approach to maybe somebody who is a strength and conditioning coach. But what is great is getting those 2 types of people together, or these different types of people together, all learning from each other and all realizing that the applications of the breath work in all of these different areas. So we've had like Adam, who's just been Team GB in Tokyo, done all the work pre-Tokyo, all the year's work before pre-Tokyo in Oxygen Advantage, really worked on his breath work. And he was saying to me, his mum used to say to him, oh, you've always got your mouth, you're always doing these weird facial photographs, because he's a slalom canoeist. And he says now his face is powerful, it's strong, because he's nasal breathing. So he's not like, oh, I'm in a state like this. So that was great. And just to get his feedback on how this is helping him. And he now wants to bring this to teaching kids and teaching other athletes and things like that, which is fantastic. And then, as I said, Sheila, who is a voice coach, so she works in corporate environments. So she's working with business leaders on how to present to big TED Talks and things like that. She works with politicians, how to present in the House of Commons.
Maybe for the politicians, she should be telling them to continue mouth breathing, but sure, half of them are anyway.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually watching a lot of them working and talking and pulling breath in. But yeah, so she's like, we don't want to be over breathing when we're talking, but when you are talking, you are breathing. You can't breathe rhythmically. You can't breathe all the time through the nose. You can't be stopping at the end of every sentence to breathe through the nose, otherwise your audience would be asleep. You've got to engage them, you've got to communicate with them. So that was fascinating, having a voice coach who's had like 20 years experience working with actors, politicians and everything with us.
But even great, you know, I suppose with a toolbox of breathing, like straight off we can think of somebody that's going to make a presentation, and people get anxious. People in the corporate world, they have to make a presentation as part of their job. They're going into a boardroom. How do they prepare for that? And we really need to bear in mind that whenever we have a stress response in the body, our breathing becomes faster and irregular. And as long as our breathing becomes faster and irregular, it's going to impact our ability to focus. Because at that point, okay, so no, I paused again. But I'm just saying that there's so many people, even on the simple thing of going into a presentation, and the thoughts of having the presentation is making them a little bit angst. They're going into that, you know, faster breathing, harder breathing. And it's going to mess up the presentation. And Dr. Rangan Chatterjee was doing a podcast about 3 or 4 months ago, and he was talking to a brain surgeon, and the brain surgeon says when he gets into a tricky situation, now you can imagine a brain surgeon at work, and you've got somebody on the table and you're operating on them. And when he gets into a tricky situation, he said the first thing he does is prevent himself from hyperventilating. And that's what we've been saying, that we can change states, because, you know, so many people are sabotaging their own performance by faulty breathing that they're not even aware of it. And it's not about the big breath that we hear in yoga often. Now, of course, there are some yoga instructors that really know their stuff. There's ideas out there about breathing that are not right. And like, I just think of myself going through university and other people. I had sleep disorder breathing. I was waking up tired in the morning. I was going in, I was feeling exhausted. And society grades us based on our intelligence and what we can achieve academically. But if we have sleep disorder breathing and dysfunctional breathing, it's going to impact our concentration and our ability to do well in exams. And of course, it's not just related to the university, but also to the corporate world. This speaking and singing is an interesting one about the breath, because I suppose the vocal cords, they're housed in the upper airway. And yet people don't protect their upper airway. The only way to protect it is by breathing in and out through the nose, and especially during sleep. Who else is interesting that's coming in through your door recently?
We've got Sheila Mark, who's like a strength and conditioning coach, really geeky, and he won't mind me saying that, but into all his Whoop bands and the aura rings. So really using sort of like the biofeedback and really showing how the breath work and the sleep and all of those things coming together can affect your heart rate variability, can affect your resting heart rate. That stuff. Another Oxygen Advantage coach who is already a coach, Andrew Ritchie, who I'm working with. We're doing a lot of work together. He is really into heart rate variability. I know he's worked with the guy you've done a podcast with, and his name has gone right out of my head at the minute, in America. Who's the guy on heart rate? Jay, yeah. So Andrew has done quite a bit of work with Jay. So Andrew and I are working together on looking at heart rate variability, how that's affected by sleep, how that's affected by training, recovery, mind, connecting to the ground. So earthing and grounding, which all sounds woo-woo, but actually earthing and grounding, there's a little bit of science behind that now. And he's seen what Andrew has done is he's been doing his heart rate variability with his clients with breathwork, also with the breathe light practice. Then he's been taking them outside and been grounding them. So literally get your feet on the ground, same position, sitting, whatever, without the breath work. And guess what? Heart rate variability goes up. Add the breath work on top of that. So this is all anecdotal, and there's no studies as such with this, but it's stuff that we're looking at to go, actually, if we can get more people using the same type of kit, and he's measuring it with Elite HRV, so that's a really good app, and you need a polar heart rate monitor. so again, it's like you say at the very beginning there, Patrick, is that all the stuff that could be woo-woo, when you actually say, well, look, here's the figures. You can see your heart rate variability has gone up. The resting heart rate's come down. And you've just done some breathe light and you've just stood barefoot on the ground, which they were doing centuries and centuries and centuries ago. But there was there's no biofeedback on that. So yes, that's great. Georgie, who was an actress or is an actress still, she's fascinating. So all of these different characters, she does a lot of work now with women's breathing throughout the day. So Georgie's done a lot of exploration into that area, and she's great. She's an actress. She's bringing it across. She's young. She's bringing it across on Instagram. So it's giving us a lot of Instagram present. So all of these instructors with their own sort of like skill, their own way of delivering, their own type of client that they'll work with. I love it. I think it's fascinating to learn from all of these.
I'll give you another example who I was working with recently, and they're snipers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they're highly trained professionals. They train physically for about 2 hours per day. And when they're on a job or an operation, they're sitting behind the sight of a gun for 1 hour. And part of it was having attention and focus on that, but also how to down-regulate as to when to pull the trigger of a gun. And I found it fascinating because I never thought that you would have people of this caliber ever interested in the breath, and that's where it's going. That really, I suppose, Gray, what it's about is we all need to have deep sleep. We achieve that with nasal breathing, light, slow, and low breathing. If we are breathing through the mouth, our sleep is shallow, we're waking up feeling pretty lousy. We're more prone to snoring, sleep apnea. On top of the deep sleep is functional breathing to improve oxygen uptake and oxygen delivery, but also to alter states, to get that balance in the autonomic nervous system. And then we can bring in breath aware, body aware, mind aware. And I suppose these are, I just wrote about it in a book called Atomic Focus, that the hierarchy of needs has really changed. And so many people are practicing distraction all day long. They're breathing fast, upper chest breathing, and they're not realizing how this is sabotaging them. Whereas we have to really take this out of the woo-woo domain. It's vitally, vitally important. You have a training coming up in London. When is it on? And just, by the way, how does it work now with COVID? Just out of interest for your face-to-face trainings, what way is it working? What are the dates, by the way?
I think it's working. We did one in March, which was fine. I mean, the beauty, the great thing is where I am in London, everybody thinks, like, as you say, I've got all of this green space behind me. So I've got literally trails around me. I've got a small studio, which is 2 minutes walk from a big park, Alexander Park, has got lots of trails. So when we did the March training, and we were lucky because it was like the middle of a heat wave. So we literally spent the whole 2 days outdoors. And that's what is brilliant, because it's given me that advantage to be able to do that. So making that the 2-day training now very experiential. So they're getting all of the science, they're getting all the understanding from the online training with yourself. And I also do a couple of online trainings too. So I'll do a Zoom session afterwards, the 2 days, so that then we'll discuss case studies. So that's quite nice. So we don't just leave them at the end of the 2 days. And then I'll maybe do another one after that just to see how people are getting on. So it's quite nice that I've also then created this little group of instructors, of people who I can relate with and get on with. So that's nice, because I think what we used to do was, before we had online stuff, is there's your 3 days, and then yes, maybe a few kept in contact. So it's a really nice way to keep in contact.
And face-to-face is so cool as well.
Sorry, sir.
Because I think face-to-face is so cool, because most people have been missing it for the last year and a half, 2 years. And there's always something different. There's something nice about having, you're working with students in front of you and you're guiding them through. So you bring them through all of the exercises, so it's very much a practical. The 2 days that's spent with is practical.
Yeah, it's very practical. I mean, obviously, questions and things, and we'll discuss the biochemistry. And when we're doing the exercises, then I'll most probably go over some of the science behind why we're doing it. I always instruct. It's always like, why are we doing this? Your clients want to know, why are you doing this? How will this help them? So we'll use the basic. I say basic, but we use the core. Core is a better word than basic. Core oxygen advantage exercises, and then some of the new ones that you've brought into the breathing cure. I also use some qigong movements because they're very, very simple, but actually they're great in working, because a lot of breath work is often done sitting. So we've got our breath class, so let's sit and do our breath work. But actually, let's do a little bit of movement as we breathe in, and let's do a little bit of opening up of the rib cage as you breathe in. So you're actually getting that expansion of the ribs, you're getting the spine moving, you're getting the connection between the diaphragm and the pelvic floor. So doing some qigong movements, and then doing some squatting qigong movements. And then that's really nice to take into walking. It was really interesting. The last one I did in March is the first thing we did. So we got this group of coaches, we had voice coaches, all of these different people. We just walked through the trail. So a bit woo-woo, but it was like, what do you notice? And because they were coaches, because I've done this, I noticed this, I noticed my diaphragm, I noticed my core, and it's like, did you really notice that? And then actually when they start thinking about it, you don't really want to be noticing or trying to breathe in a particular way. So that's like you were saying, it's that breath up a hill a little bit, because then when you get that first breath awareness element of it, then you can start adding, right, what happens if you walk up the hill nasal breathing? What happens if you walk up the hill with a breath hold? So they can really feel that the difference and how it's benefiting them. So it is very, very, very practical.
Somebody's just wondering, who are you, Gray?
Who am I?
So we're chatting with Gray Caws. He's based in London, and Gray has a training coming up in London the next few days, and we're just talking about, I suppose, the overall application of breathing and where it can bring us. And I think it's a really exciting time. I have to say, the last 3 years has been a tremendous journey with Brett, and you're probably seeing it too, because I remember like starting off almost 20 years ago now, and like it was good, and I really enjoyed it. It's always been a full-time occupation, but it's gone to the point now that we can't keep up. That's the demand is so awareness out there, which is really, really good. And I think high time, like even, for example, you were talking about the devices that people are wearing, and people are wearing devices, and really the device is only providing you feedback. The tools to optimize your data is on the breath. And it's not just about doing the slow breathing to 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, or 4.5 breaths to 6.5 breaths per minute. It's also about nose breathing during sleep, which you spoke about, light breathing, which stimulates the vagus nerve and helps to strengthen the baroreflex, slow breathing, as we spoke about, and deep breathing, but understanding how they all connect together. And then doing long breath holds when we want to stress the body. And sometimes I find, Gray, you know, we were talking about different people. If I've got a group of alpha males coming in, and I'll go with some of the easy exercises, but then there's a point. I'm going to show you these guys that there's something in breathing, and I'll get them doing repeated sprints with breath holds on the exhalation. And I push them that they feel challenged, and they get it. They really do, and they understand that we can do through the breath, you know, stimulating anaerobic glycolysis, improving buffering capacity. I think it's very exciting. What are the dates of your training, and how can people find out about you?
The next training actually is it's not this weekend, it's the next weekend. So I've got one on the 18th and 19th of September. So there are a couple of places on that. I don't do a massive group. Because obviously they have all of the training with yourself as well. So it's a small group that I work with. So that's coming up 18th and 19th of September. And then we've also got 26th and 27th of February. So we've put a couple of dates in for next year, because some people will want in next year as well. So they can find that definitely through the oxygenadvantage.com website, so on the main website. but also oxygenadvantage.co.uk. So if you just pop in .co.uk rather than .com and go to the teach it bit there, that'll scroll down, and then there's the information and everything that you get in those trainings. So you get the training with yourself, you get the 2 days in-person workshop. There are no restrictions here at the minute in London. So the social distancing, we don't have to social distance, we don't have to wear masks, but the studio space is nice and big, it's airy, we open all of the windows. So if anybody's concerned about that, we're outside regardless of the weather, because that's all about the experience as well. We've got some nice hills to walk up, some nice hills to run up, some nice steady hills to walk down. So we like you say, we'll do all of the elements of stressing the body, but at the same time of relaxation and recovery. So yeah, that's when the next 2 trainings are. And I think your trainings now, you have those, it's every 6 weeks, is it? Every month? So what tends to happen is you can sign up, even if they sign up now for February, what they can do is jump into your live training. So they'll get everything as soon as they sign. You'll get everything as soon as you sign up. You can do the training with Patrick and then come to a workshop in February. One of the guys coming to this next workshop is an MMA fighter coming over from the Netherlands. He was due to come over in March. Obviously, in March, there was a lot of restriction of people coming over from the Netherlands, and it was just too much for him to be able to do that. So he's actually gone through the instructor training with yourself. He's done all of his case studies, but he's coming for the 2-day practical, which is great. I'm looking at that. I've met him online, so I know him online. So as you say, it's going to be really nice to meet him in person and see what he looks like in real life.
Cool. Just looking at some of the questions here. Thanks a million. Really glad I came. Ray coached me to become a Qi running coach.
Who's that?
Excellent instructor, highly recommended. And that's come in from Fitness with Emer.
Right.
You have a fan there. And we will be putting this into the feed. At least I think we will be. As soon as, we will do that. And I'm just scrolling down to see if there's anything else. The whole thing is paused again. It seems that the internet connection here, it's been a lot of comments, and it's been a very good, interesting conversation. So I'm just going to see if there's anything that, excellent point, Fitness Reamer, good conversation, cheers. Unfortunately, I missed the instructors catch up tomorrow, Australia. Okay, so I think we've got everything. Great, we'll have another one of these shortly enough. I think they're good, good chat, and enjoyed the conversation with you. So, until the next time,
Thanks
take
for
care.
asking me. Thanks for taking your time, Patrick, to chat. Really enjoyed it. And thanks for everybody for joining.
Likewise, guys. Thanks for joining. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, Patrick. Bye-bye. Bye.